1, 2, okay. So, hi everyone, I'm very excited to be here today. And I'm going to talk about applied psychology. Fun fact about me, I love studying psychology. And I also love the combination between software engineer and how to apply psychology and combine fields that you love in order to make the best product out there. So, my name is Keren Kenzi. I'm a senior software engineer. I volunteer at different initiatives to help women in R&D in their development, in their professional growth. And I'm so excited to be here today. I know you are after lunch, so I hope you are energized and refreshed. And let's get started. So today I'm going to talk about cognitive psychology and how to use those principles to improve the UI UX design. Why it is important? Like most of us work at companies that have maybe UX UI dedicated person that provides us with the design. But sometimes we might find ourselves working on our own startup, or maybe the UX UI person is sick or is unavailable, or she is unavailable, and we want to make the best product out there and give our own input to the in the process. So when we talk about cognitive psychology, we talk about a field in psychology that is all about studying the mental processes underlying cognition. So what does it mean? It includes perception, attention, sensation, memory, imagery, language, problem solving, decision making, reasoning, and so and so. And today I'm going to focus on 3 of the main processes that I find most relevant to our field. So we will talk about perception, attention, and judgment and decision making. So let's start with perception. We receive a lot of stimuli from the world surrounding us through our senses. We view objects, we smell things, and perception is all about the process in which we interpret objects surrounding us based on the stimuli we receive from the senses. There are a lot of theories that explain how, as human, we perceive stuff, and one of those theories is the Gestalt. Have you heard about the Gestalt? Yeah, so probably you heard also the sentence, the sum is bigger than its part and everything like this. So the Gestalt psychology offers a few principles to explain how we perceive objects. One of them is the law of Prägnanz. Are any German in the crowd? Am I pronouncing it right? Prägnanz? Yeah, cool. So it's also called the principle of good figure or the principle of simplicity. So we all know that computers has limited CPU, right? So our brain has also limited capacity for processing information. And the way it wants to reduce its load is by perceiving things the simple way possible. So if we take a look, for example, at the Olympic sign, we will not perceive it as 9 separate objects, but rather as 5 rings, right? So this is an example. Another principle of the Gestalt is the principle of proximity, meaning that objects that are near each other are perceived as grouped together. You can see in this example that it's harder to understand which name belongs to which picture, right? Because there is a similar gap between the name and each of the picture above it. So it's harder for our brain to grasp which name and which speaker it belongs to. So how do we solve this issue? We solve it by taking a gap and making sure that all the relevant information about a speaker is close to the image itself. So how we can apply it to our own product, like this is a website, I'm sure you're all developing website or product and stuff like that. We can apply it, for example, in a setting page. Instead of adding a divider in between section 1 and section 2, we just need to separate it, add a little gap in between the section, and our brain will automatically know to separate, okay, those are close together, so they are one part, they're related, and the things that comes underneath after the gap are totally complete different section. So we don't need to add any lines to divide between the section. It's much more aesthetic. Do you agree? Yeah, okay. I will take silence as a yes. Another principle is the principle of similarity, meaning that elements are perceived as grouped together if they share similar attributes, such as size, shape, color, and direction. So again, I chose an image from the website of this conference, because it's a great conference. I'm sure you can all agree. And I gave different colors to different speakers, and you can see there is different kind of background separating between the speakers. Now, this is just an example I gave, but you can actually make product and items relate to each other if they share similar colors. For example, if I want to say those speakers speak about a certain domain, I can give them a certain color. If I want to say they are in a certain track, I can also give a different color. And you can apply it to the design of your product as well. We're not just talking about the JSConf website. We can apply it to the product that we design. So keep it in mind when you design your own product. Let's talk about attention. So attention is focusing on certain feature, certain thoughts, certain object while ignoring others. It's really a more higher process than perception. Why is that? I'm sure we can all agree that it's really hard to concentrate on a talk, right? After lunch, we all want to ignore the urge to scroll social media, to look at a phone, to check notification. So you can really relate that it's not an easy task to stay focused on this talk and give the attention, right? I hope you do stay with me throughout the talk, but you can see it's not an easy task. So let's see attention. Anybody here from the picture? Do you have the same attendees? So this is a picture from JSConf Budapest from 2022. I took it from the YouTube channel. And I want to mention it because I want to share with you the cocktail party effect. It's an example of how attention works. When we are at a party, whether you were at the after party yesterday or joining today to the after party, you will engage in conversation, right? And while you engage in conversation, you're speaking to the person in front of you while ignoring all the other conversation happening surrounding you. So this is the kind of things that cognitive psychology studies. But there is a special case. If somebody else says your name, you will hear it, even though it's not the person talking to you. We have a kind of threshold for specific words that are more interesting to us. So, how do we grab attention on a product, or how do we grab attention on a website? For example, the JSConf Budapest, we want to make sure that the most important information are really easy to locate and identify. For example, we can see here it's easy to locate the date, and it's easy to locate the button for buying tickets, right? Because you're whole year, you all saw the button of the tickets. So this is an example. Another example is, for example, taking a photo and using numbers and big font to emphasize a point you want to convey. Our visual system in the brain has the largest amount of neurons, which meaning we're visual creatures, and the best way to convey things is to add a picture to it. There's not just a saying a picture is worth 1,000 words. We can actually use it to our advantage. When we use product, we can add image, we can add diagram to emphasize the relevant information. So this is one example, this is the second example. And if we want to add graph to our system, sometimes we use data we want to show our user. And if there is data that we want to emphasize, we can also give it a different coloring, different style, make it bold, make it easy to identify and locate. Are you ready to play some games? Yeah? Woo! Okay. Get ready. I'm going to show you a few stimuli. And I want you to try to remember everything you see, okay? There is a test afterwards, okay? Ready? No? Okay, I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's hope it will work. Okay, all done. How many of you remember the number 9? Be honest, don't cheat. Okay, a lot of people in the crowd. Okay, and 18, less people, right? Less hands. Okay, and what about JSConf? Woo, a lot of people. So this demonstrates the fact that people tend to remember the first thing the best and the last thing the best. And because we have more time to memorize the things we see first, and the things that we see last are more fresh in our brain, so we tend to remember them more easily. But we also tend to remember stuff that stand out. JSConf Budapest was really popping out with all this number, because we had homogeneous numbers, and then we saw a word. So it really stood out. So it makes us easier to remember. So how it is applied to product? For example, it is called the von Restorff effect, isolation effect. And it says that when, as I said, when multiple stimuli are presented, the one that differs from the rest is highly to be remembered. So we can take this principle and apply it to product. For example, we can add tags to a certain option that we want to stand out. If we are purchasing a plan, whether it's, I don't know, Spotify or Mentimeter or something like that, or a flight, we get a recommendation tag, meaning we want it to stand out as comparing to the other options. So let's move on to a more complex mental processes. Up until now, we talked about simple processes, perception, attention, but there are other complex processes such as decision-making and stuff like that. So, let's talk about mental models. Mental models are eternal representation of the world surrounding us. For example, if you think of a shopping cart, a lot of shopping online has this icon of a shopping cart, right? Shopping cart is a mental model. We expect the shopping cart to represent, as I said, shopping cart, right? We also have example of the delete button and other things like that. How many of you actually saw in real life a floppy disk? Okay, I'm just checking the age. I just saw like a few, I don't know, months ago, a joke on Twitter saying that somebody saw a floppy disk in real life and said, "Oh, mommy, you printed the save icon of, you 3D printed it." Okay, so this is another example of mental processes. The point of leveraging mental models in our product is to make the system more intuitive. When we see the save button, the edit button, the icon of the trash can, we know what it means. We make it more intuitive for the user to use our system. So it's a really good thing to use. It also makes the product more aesthetic, right? So let's talk about judgment and decision making. I will need volunteers from the audience, about 50 volunteers. Scan this QR code, we're gonna play a game. No, not just a game. You need to choose a number of your favorite dessert. Ready? Can you scan it? Cool. So I'm gonna move over here. Let's see, one connected. Just type in the number, not a word. Great. Come on, connect. This is a word cloud. Basically, it gives a bigger font size to the option that is most selected by the most people. Great. Okay, cool. We have, wow. So many hearts, thank you. Let's see the options before this. Okay, so number 17. Let's see what number 17. 23 is a second runner, and 22. Ooh. Okay, cool. Let's see what the favorite dessert is. 17 and 19. So let's see. 17 is the pancake, 19 is a chocolate cake with strawberries. Good choices, good choices. I'm happy you're after lunch, otherwise if it was before lunch, I would lose you at this point, right? You wouldn't pay attention to me at all, just thinking about the pancakes. Okay, but if I were to say to you, select this one of those, which one is easier? The first option to select or this options? This one. So we have only 3 options to select from. We don't need to be overthinking, comparing so many other options. It's a simple way to reduce the cognitive load. I'm just offering, like yesterday we wanted to choose a restaurant to eat dinner. We opened Google Maps. There are so many Italian options. It took me like half an hour to decide where to go to eat. And I was so hungry. By the time we got there, it was devastating. Okay, so this is referring to hike slow. The more choices we have, the longer it takes to make choices, as we just seen with dessert. And where we can see these examples, we can see it in flights. So flights offer you usually the classic, just a bag, a classic and a flexible option, right? You only see those 3 options. We can see our example of the recommendation. We wanted to stand out. And if, like, airline companies offered you to select between different sizes of bags, different sizes of, I don't know, different seats, different things, and offered you all the possible options, by the time you select a flight, the price of the flight will be so increased that you probably won't take that vacation. So keep in mind that when you offer in a system setting and stuff like that, when you offer your user a certain options, make sure to offer them only 3 to 4 options. Don't overwhelm them with so many options because it might cause them to abandon your app, your system, so no to that, right? And another good thing to do is to do progressive disclosure, which means you want to take the user step by step throughout the process. You don't want them to feel, for example, in the settings or in the process, all the relevant information they need for a flight booking or for purchasing, I don't know, Amazon S3 or whatever. You want to take them step by step throughout the process. First, select the time of the flight, then choose between the options of the settings, and etc. Okay? Like this. And another thing I want to cover is I want to talk about the decisions and the choices we offer our user. This is really relevant to if you implement a settings page in your app or in your product. Why is that? So, a study conducted by Johnson and Goldstein back in 2003 found that there is a difference between people saying that I want to be an organ donor than actually becoming one. They found that in certain countries, like Hungary, the percentage of people that wants to become an organ donor is higher than 99%, which is really great. It really saves lives. While in other countries, they might claim they want to become an organ donor, but eventually they don't sign in. And why is that? Are you opt-in or are you opt-out? You know, we sometimes need to implement settings and we have checkbox or toggles to implement, and the way we set it by default has so many meanings. If they found out that in countries where the checkbox is marked with a V, then usually people will become an organ donor because the default option is to be one, while you need to take an active step in order to unmark the checkbox. While in countries where the consent rate of becoming an organ donor is lower, the checkbox is unmarked by default. So next time you want your user to behave in a certain way, to use your settings in the system in a certain way, make sure that the checkbox or the toggle are marked the way you want it to be. Any reminder of an example of an opt-out procedure? Can you think what it is? Cookies, exactly. So website usually gives the opt-out procedure, meaning that by default, it is marked as I'm collecting all your cookies, like the Cookie Monster, and if you want me not to collect the analytics, you need to actively go to the settings and deselect it. And all those things also also related to the status quo bias, which is the tendency to do nothing when a choice has to be made. How many of you have to renew the insurance company or the pension plan or stuff like that, and you stay in the same company just because you don't like the bureaucratics and taking the active step to switch it, even though it might be the best option for you and more beneficial? So a lot of people have the tendency to not do nothing when they have to select, but remember, not making a choice is also making a choice, so keep that in mind. And this is they're related to our product. If we want to do all those principles relate to the setting, for examples, and things like that. So we talked about several principles we can apply to make our product better and to align with cognitive principles that makes the product more easy and reduces the cognitive loads of our users. And by making and following this principle, we also make the product more aesthetic, right? We saw that if we group together a related option and keep a similar option with the same design, our brain automatically knows to group those things together and knows that they are related. It ends up in a much more aesthetic website, much more aesthetic app. And there is an aesthetic usability effect, which is the tendency of people to perceive good-looking website, like aesthetic website, as much more efficient. I know that once I tried to book a flight in one of the airlines, and I saw their website, and I thought to myself, like, a friend recommended this airline for booking a flight to London, and was like, this website looks really weird. It's like old-fashioned. I'm not sure if I'm on the right website. I'm not sure if I want to put my credit card information in this website. So think about it when you design. The more the aesthetic your website, your app, the more the user will perceive it as easy to use. And it also reminds me of the halo effect. Anybody knows of the halo effect? Okay, so we have one maybe up or in the audience. I'm not seeing any hands because of the lights. But the halo effect talks about our tendency to perceive a person as having a good additional good trait based on, for example, if you see an attractive person, you might think that he's more intelligent. So we tend to think of a person that has one good attribute as having additional good attributes, even though there is no evidence they actually exist. And this is kind of similar to the aesthetic usability effect, and I'm just saying it to make sure you're not biased and think of all those principles and all those biases next time you meet a person and next time you design a product or an app and stuff like that. So thank you very much. I hope that's the end of the principles that I'm going to cover. So I hope you're going to take this and kind of look into it. This is Medium blog that sums up everything I just talked about. And it's important to know the stuff because we want to take a more proactive roles in our job. We want to give input. We want to talk to the product manager and say, listen, I think we can use a better design, maybe implement stuff like this or like that because it will improve the user experience. It will improve the way they experience the product. And it's a really good thing to take a more proactive role in our job and become better developer and be more involved in the development process. So I hope you took something out of this talk. And I want to thank you very much for attending this, especially after lunch. And enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.